Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the RadioMaster T8 Pro. Yeah, this radio kind of just slipped onto the market. Didn't seem to send any review samples or anything, so I did buy this one. I got mine from Race Day Quads. If you're interested in looking into it, I'll put links wherever I can find it down in the video description below. But doing things that have that feel that we're looking for is really tough to do a review. Things that fit on our face, things that fit in our hands. We're all a little bit different. And so I'm going to do the best I can to kind of describe what I'm sensing and feeling, what I've experienced in using this for about a week or 10 days. And then we'll also take a look at the pictures. I did take it apart. I was trying to see if there were springs that I could adjust the tension on. So we'll get to look at some of the internal components. And then I did kind of a range-ish test, more of a proof of concept that you can get this on a particular kind of quad. And that'll pretty much end the video there. But let's first start down at the desk and taking a look at the touch and the feel. First thing to talk about is there's two versions of this. This is the Pro version, of course, and then there's the standard version. I think the price difference is $5 or $10, something like that. And it might be a bit more. I'm not looking at the prices right at the moment. But the main difference, to my knowledge, is this screen. So the T8 without the screen puts it more in that beta FPV Lite 2 radio sort of mixed, where you just have a bind button on the back, and this one does have it as well. This one has some different feature sets, so we're going to take a look at what we've got. Of course, it comes with a few accessories. I think it came with a USB cable for charging, and charging USB is the only way this can charge because it does not have removable batteries. And then this little module just kind of covers up the bay in the back if you take the screen off. Of course, you get a manual with it as well. So as far as the form factor goes, we probably looked a lot, when you have these GamePad or joystick pad sort of radios, many of them look very, very similar. You might compare it to something like the t-lite, which you can see it's taller. It has a longer grip section, of course. It looks to be about the same width as far as I can tell. Very close to about the same width. Of course, the t-lite has switches on top. This is a new t-lite for those that follow the channel. Like I said, the night that I had launched that other video, I'd already placed an order for another one because I do like the radio, but my first one did die after a couple months of hard use. Another radio we might compare it to would be the FR-Sky X-Lite. This is for quite a while, probably 2+ years was my favorite radio. So very similar in form factor here as we look at these. Looks like the X-Lite is a little bit taller, if that's not something you can tell, but it also looks like the grips are bigger around on the T8 Pro here. So it's just a quick look to compare the three different sort of GamePad style radios that I have. I'm mainly going to be doing comparisons when I talk about this between the T-lite and the T8 Pro because they're very similar in price point. They're at that sub $80 price point, and they are very similar in their designs. So let's talk about the gimbals. That was something that I noticed right away. The gimbal tension on the T8 Pro is more than I like. The gimbal tension on the T-lite is more fitting for what I look for. I also noticed, especially on the right stick, the center point seems to be a bit more pronounced than it is on the T-lite, and that was something else I noticed. Those things impacted my flying. I don't think the gimbals are as smooth either. This one doesn't tout itself as having Hall sensor gimbals. It does say in some of their materials that it has Hall gimbals, whereas the T-lite does have the Hall sensor gimbals. So that would make sense that these are a little bit smoother. As far as the sticks go, all that stuff the same. They've got a little bit of a design flair with the red in here. Of course, the switches on the top are short throw or short stubby switches, which many people look for. The X-Lite has these as well. I think these work very well, especially in smaller radios. It just seems as though a longer switch like this is just kind of asking for trouble, especially when it's come to packing in your bag. I don't do that, but that's one of those things I see and I hear about is when people pack their bag or they put this in their bag or they shift their bag in some manner, that it's oftentimes one of the switches gets broken off. So something to consider there as well. Of course, this one runs on a single 18650. They market this one as running on a single 1S 1000 milliamp battery, but that's not true. And we'll get to that when we look at the pictures. So as far as the form factor, I really, really like how it fits in my hands. I'm a pincher. I know that will kind of confuse some people because they think of these as GamePad style of radios, but I pinch with these radios. I've been pinching since my, I don't know, 10 months in. I started pinching, I think, somewhere around there. It might have been a year and a half. I don't know. It's been a number of years that I've been flying essentially like this. I kind of cup the radio with these back two fingers. I stick my middle finger up top, and I use my middle finger for my switches. Typically for me, arm, disarm. So I arm it up, flick it, disarm. That's how it works for me, and I can hold this. I can hold this one more comfortably, sorry, I'm jiggling the camera, than I can the t-lite. Now, my hands aren't necessarily big. I think my ring size last time I checked was an 11. I have been told I have wide palms, but my fingers aren't necessarily long. I thought I had a baseball sitting here. Let me grab that. If this helps in some way, this is a standard United States baseball. I think they're standard all over the world, but that's how it fits in my hand. And this is a four-seam fastball. When it comes to that fit, I really like it, but it's very slick. So if I were to use this radio long term, I have some roll of neoprene that's real thin. I think it's 1/8 inch thick. I would probably put some of that neoprene on it to give it a more feel in my hand that it's going to stay put. This one has the soft touch, which I know some of you don't like the soft touch because it wears down. Of course, I haven't had that issue. But of course, I've also got two t-lites, one that no longer functions. But this feels like there's just a slight more grip to it in my hand. The way I hold it very light. I don't really squeeze it or anything like that. I'm not squeezing it together with my hands. It just kind of sits in my hands the way I cup it. So this touch, I think, is a benefit to give it a little bit of an extra feel that the radio is going to be secure in my hands. As far as the stick throws go, I don't have any issue with that. They just don't feel as smooth, and the spring tension isn't what I would want it to. And you might be wondering, why am I talking about spring tension so much? Well, again, when we get to the pictures, we can talk about that. Let's turn it on here a little bit. Keep in mind, I have not charged this since I got it. So we'll turn it on here, and you'll get to hear the speaker, which is right here.
Welcome to OpenTX.
Okay, so hopefully you heard that. If not, I'll do an overlay on that. You can see this is our battery indicator right here. When I got it, it was on 4. So I've been using it daily. I've been doing a lot of test flying on a TKS 75 that's 2S. I don't recommend you do this just yet. We're still working on a thickness for this frame, making sure it's going to be pretty durable. So I've been flying this daily, anywhere from 4 packs on a bad day to maybe 8, 10 packs on a good day. So that's what I've been using this with. I also went on another flight that we'll see a little bit later in the video with this radio. Typical OpenTX stuff. You've got all the buttons you need in order to navigate OpenTX, bind your models, change the model names. You can see I named mine D8 here. Hopefully you can see that. And then these are your trims. As far as the screen goes, it seems to me that that's going to be just about mandatory in order to be able to use it very well. I know it's got the bind button on the back. So many people have problems with using LED lights and binding. I can't advise you buy the version, the non-pro version, if you're looking at this radio, because that screen is going to be so handy, and it's not that much more. Especially when you have multiple models and you might be binding more than once, or if you have to rebind for any reason, the screen is just so handy. It's not some high resolution screen by any chance, but it's a very handy. The size that you can see it there, and it's actually got a pretty decent viewing angle on it there. So it's not a really, I've seen screens where you can't read them unless it's dead on. This does pretty well to my eye. Yeah, it fades a little bit as we get in and out, but I can still read it and see what's on the screen at pretty extreme angle. So that's pretty good. So I'm going to turn this back off here. Pretty typical. Something else about this screen is it seems like it's manufactured a bit off. It doesn't fold flat because of those little knobs for the trim buttons. That to me seems like a miss. It seems like if you're going to have a folding screen and it's going to have the space right here, shouldn't it fold all the way down? Seems like this bracket needs to come up a couple of millimeters in order to clear those buttons so the screen would fold down, which would be handy because then if you put it in your bag, It's essentially protecting your gimbals a little bit, but also the screen isn't going to be flopping around. So, yeah. And then if you take this off, this section of the screen doesn't fold down to where it would be compact. So it just seems to me it's meant to be on, and it just clips on here. It's just meant to be on, and it should have been manufactured in order to close. So I think that's a bit of a miss. You can see they've got some texture on the back here. That really doesn't do anything for me when I'm holding it, but you know, it is there. And it's also got these rockers, which are a little bit hard. They're like finger holds. See, I'm really having to get my little pinky down in there. There, I got them. And I can see where that would be handy. You know, you can rest your fingers down in there. I can see where I might even use it. But I've been using radios without that for so long, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with it, and I don't miss it without it. So that, again, that's going to depend on you largely. Let's go ahead and take a look at those pictures that I took of this. So as you can see here from this opening picture, we've got two 1S batteries right here. Now they might be wired in a way they're in a series, so they operate like a one single battery. But as far as having a single battery, that's just not the case. And they've got foam packed around them, so they don't really come out. Although when I took the back shell off of mine, they did fall out. So when you're taking yours apart, note that these could be loose inside there. I didn't feel them rolling around or anything, so it could have been part of the process of me separating the shell, which separating the shells was a little bit of a challenge. But here we get to see the back of the board, as well as that bind button that's right in here. And you can see then all our different wires are routed around or through that board. And then we've got our SD card, our aux port up here, as well as our USB port up here. Just kind of a little profile view of that same thing. You see that ribbon cable in here. We'll get to see that more as we go through these pictures. Just a little top-down view. You can kind of see that ribbon cable again, and then you can see where the board, how it mounts on those longer standoffs in through there. Nothing particular of interest in that particular view. Just a side profile view of the gimbals, as you can see there. If you need to pause anytime, go ahead. And then another profile view, just to be thorough. Make sure you do the left and the right. Here's where it's separated board. You can see that little CMOS battery on there, down there. We've had it in computers for years and years and years. And you see the USB-C port a little bit clearer, and you can see the antenna that comes off the radio. It's fairly lengthy. It comes off that back board there, and then you get a closer view of the ribbon cable. You can also see where our gimbals wires come through that board a little bit. This is what creates our vibration. It's just a little motor with a weight on the end that's not even. So when it spins, it goes voot, voot, voot. And a little wider shot. Hopefully you don't need to see that much more. This is an area where I want to draw your attention to. So I wanted to address the spring tensions. And you can really only see it in this image. There's one here. This is the ratchet. By the way, the ratchet on it is very smooth. It's barely in contact with that. It's almost just providing some stick stability. It's not an actual ratchet. So if you fly planes and you're looking for a ratchet, you would probably have to open this up and tighten it up. But the spring tension right here, this little screw holds this little piece. And this screw, if you unscrew it, yes, it does relax this piece down, but it doesn't hold this piece steady in place. It actually gets kind of floppy to where, in my opinion, that's not an ability to adjust the spring tension. That's just getting ready to take the piece that holds the spring in place off. You know, you've turned it a couple of times, and now it's kind of just flopping around. So I don't think they have manufactured in these gimbals the ability to adjust the spring tension. It's probably why there's not a hole in the backside where you could line that up and do that yourself. And this screw, where is it? I think it's down. Oh, it's right here in my face. This screw has the same thing right here, to where if you unscrew that a little bit, this black piece that is holding onto the spring, it just kind of starts to sink, but it's not held in place. It wiggles every which way. So if you're looking for adjustable spring tension, you'd have to do that through, or in my opinion, you'd have to do that with different springs altogether. This gives you a better shot of where the board is for the lights and the power button here back. Oh, here's a close-up. I've forgotten I'd take that. This little piece right here, that's the piece I'm talking about. When you unscrew this screw, this whole piece starts to sink down, and then it wiggles around because it's essentially just loose. That's not how I'm used to gimbals having spring tension adjustments built into them. Usually they're fairly firm. The screw might get loose, but the piece that the spring holds onto is still fairly firm. I don't know why I took that picture, but there it is for you to look at. Okay, so in the flight that you're watching here on screen, I found a section not far from the house that is relatively safe, at least in my opinion, and it was the weekend, so I could take my kids out with me to be my observers, of course. Gotta have a line of sight observers. And as you can see from this line, it takes me about a minute to fly out there. And we went 438 meters, or a little over 1,400 feet. And this is running on an FrSky XM. I'm sorry that it doesn't have RSSI on there if that's what you're looking at. I can tell you that I didn't get an RSSI call out until I got down to the end and turned around. This isn't a range test, but to me it's more of a proof of concept that if you're flying at least an XM Plus and you're flying in an area like this, that you should be able to get similar range. It should be right around that 430 meter marker of some sort. Of course, this is my tadpole. It's a 2.5-inch tadpole, and it's got the Runcam Racer 2 or 3 inside of it. So the colors don't look good, but it's I like the camera for flying very fast and very tight environments because it just seems like it has a lower latency to it, and I think I can feel it. Could be a placebo, but I think I can feel it. So that's my proof of concept as far as range. That's something that everybody asks me about. I think another thing to consider is the fact that this radio has the C2500 chip in it, or is it the CC2500 chip? It doesn't have the 4-in-1 in it. It's just got one chip, and therefore it's not as compatible with the as wider range as this one. This one, of course, comes with the same sort of chip. You can buy it and save like $5 or $6 of the t-lite with just the same 2500 chip in it. This has, for $69, I think it is, this has the 4-in-1. So it's got all sorts of protocols, more than I even know what they are, whereas this only has about 5 or 6, and it doesn't include DSMX. So if you're moving from DSMX to this, not a good idea because that won't work. There'll be a list. I'll put the multi-module list down in the video description below, but it's basically FrSky and then maybe a couple others, but not ones that I've used in this hobby. I don't even think it supported FlySky when I looked. So that's again, I think it's another shortfall. I think they should have used a 4-in-1 module in this to make it a lot more compatible, allow people to move and transition to and from it, which is surprising because RadioMaster generally does that. So they must have been shooting for a price point, and I'm wondering if they couldn't meet that price point with that chip because they had to create a different mold for a radio. My understanding of creating these molds is that they're very, very expensive, whereas Jumper reused a mold, maybe customized it for some additional buttons and a screen, but this basic shape was already in some manufacturing house, whereas this was new. So they may have cut corners to meet a price point because of the new mold. Can't say that for sure, but it makes sense, at least in my brain. The last thing I think to talk about is this area for a multi-module. They make no mention of this being used for any other module in the back. So if you're looking to run Crossfire or Ghost or Tracer or any other module on here, I would not count on it. It doesn't indicate from their manual to the manual that's on their website, which is nearly exactly the same. Any of the promotion materials, nothing indicates that this is used for a multi-module of any sort or an external module of any sort. Again, we're going to run into the same problems that we ran into with the Jumper t-lite because of the fact that it is essentially running 1S through the radio. So there's a possibility that they have a buck boost converter in there and that they could ramp up the voltage. I would think that would drain the battery, but there's a possibility of that. Unfortunately, I do not have a Crossfire, a Tracer, a Ghost module to even try on this. So that's part of the review that I'm just going to have to chalk up to a failure or a lack of purchasing those things. When I'm doing Crossfire, I pick up my Tango 2. Just don't like the idea of having a bunch of modules laying around, and therefore I've never reviewed any of those modules on the channel. Yeah, I'm a micro guy, so I kind of fly close in, and those exotic protocols, I know many people love them, but I have never found a great drive to try them out for myself. I've flown Crossfire, and I think it's a great link, but it wasn't compelling enough for me in my flying situations to purchase a module. So there you go. That's the one thing that if you want to know about this radio, I just can't tell you. So I like the radio. I just think there's a few things that it came up a little bit short on, at least for me. I wish the form factor had the soft touch feel to it. I wish the screen was kind of integrated. You know, I like small. I like to be able to just grab everything with my hands, stuff a handful of batteries in my pocket, throw the goggles on my head, walk out back, and go for a quick fly. So compact is easy for me. I don't pack. It's very rare I fly somewhere else. I do have some flight footage I'll show you in a video coming up of me flying somewhere else if you care to watch that. But this is very, very close. I think there's a market for it. I think some people could use it and would like it, but I don't know if it's you or not. If it is you and you want to check it out, I've got links down in the video description below. You can buy from any of those shops, doesn't matter. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.